Hello, this is Mario from Audion. In this video, we will talk about creating realistic crowd oralizations with a single speech audio. When creating a crowd oralization with many sources, assigning the same audio file to all sources will create a very unrealistic oralization.
The tinderbox. There came a soldier marching down the high road. 1, 2, 1, 2. He had his knapsack on his back.
So, for a realistic crowd oralization, it is required to use many uncorrelated audio files of speech. However, it can often be difficult to find a large group of such audio files. Audion Auditorium and Combined come with the Audio Effects tool, which allows you to take a single speech audio and from it generate many more audios with variations in timing, speed, pitch, and spectrum. This effectively results in a group of uncorrelated speech audios, which when put together will sound like a realistic crowd. You will find the Audio Effects tool in the Tools menu at the top. Here, click on Open Audio File.
The tinderbox. There came a soldier marching down the high road. 1, 2, 1, 2. He had his knapsack on his back.
Once the audio file is loaded, you can start adding effects by clicking on this plus icon. The first effect we will apply is Change Duration. As the name implies, this effect can trim or extend the audio file. However, it will also introduce a random time shift on each generated audio. This ensures that each generated audio will start at a different point relative to the original audio. If the end of the original audio is reached in a generated file, the original audio will simply be looped to fill the gap. So, the change duration effect can also be used to generate time shifts even if you decide not to change the duration itself. If you extend the duration, Audion will loop as many times as necessary to achieve the final duration. You can click on Play Audio File to listen to an example of a randomly generated audio with the current settings.
Follow to the roots. Climb to the top of the trunk and you'll find a hole through which you can let
And you can
yourself
keep
down
clicking on
deep
Play
under
Audio
the tree.
File to listen to more
I'll
variations.
tie a rope around your middle so that when... That's very kind, you old witch, said the soldier. See that big tree? To the top of the trunk and you'll find a hole through which you can let yourself down deep under the tree.
Now we will add the Phase Vocoder effect. This effect changes two parameters, speed and pitch. For both of them, you can decide the possible range for the randomly applied change. For speed, you can define a range of speed factors, where 1.0 is unchanged. For pitch, you can decide a range of semitones. The term semitones comes from music, where one semitone is the pitch interval between one note and the next closest note. However, the applied change can include decimals of a semitone, for example, a pitch shift of 1.2 semitones. The default ranges for speed and pitch are appropriate for speech, but feel free to experiment with different ranges if you wish to. Again, you can preview random generations with Play Audio File. Keep in mind that the Phase Vocoder effect will generate speech audios that sound very artificial in isolation. However, remember that when put together with other randomly generated audios, they will sound good as a crowd.
Just. Good evening, soldier, she said. What a fine sword you've got there, and what a big knapsack. Witch. A witch whose lower lip dangled down her chest. Good evening, soldier, she said. burning. By their light, you'll see there are 3 doors. Each door has a key in it.
Finally, we will apply the spectromizer effect. In essence, this generates a random equalization curve for each audio. This change is much more subtle than the others, so we will skip the preview. At the bottom of the window, you can select how many files to generate. Remember that each individual file will be generated with a random variation within the specified ranges. In this case, only the duration will be the same for all files, but they will still all have different time shifts. You can start generating the files by clicking Save. Then you select a base file name. However, a number will also be added by Audyan at the end of each file name. Audyan will take some time to generate the files, depending on the length and number of files. This can go from less than a minute to several minutes. An easy way to assign the audio files to all of your sources and define the jobs and convolutions is through the multi-source signal auralization expert, which we explain in our tutorial on producing auralizations of your room model. Now, let's listen to the auralization. As you can hear, this sounds like a very convincing crowd, even though it was all generated from a single speech audio. To make it even a bit more realistic, you can generate half of the files from a male voice and the other half from a female voice.
The
Equilibrar a
tinderbox.
resposta de uma
There
sala
came
no
a soldier
tempo, na
marching down the
frequência
high
e no
road.
espaço não é uma
1,
tarefa
2,
simples.
1, 2. He had his
Para isso,
knapsack
é
on his
preciso
back.
saber.
In the Audio Effects window, you can select multiple audio files at a time with Ctrl-click. Audyan will create the specified number of copies per file. Aside from the audio effects we used for this application, there are other audio effects that can be used for other applications. For example, you can use the chorus and spectromizer effects to generate an instrument section from a single instrument's recording. With that, we conclude this tutorial, and we hope you have found it useful. Good luck!